On April 19th, 1897, John J. McDermott of New York wins the very first Boston Marathon, running in just under 3 hours. Starting was arguably known as the best marathon in America and possibly the whole world. And here's the story behind how it all began today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history. Now, the Boston Marathon was the brainchild of the Boston Athletic Association and one of its members, John Graham, who actually participated in the very first modern Olympics in 1896. Now, on a previous episode, we talked about the modern Olympics, and the marathon was one of those events. Now, at this time, the marathon didn't have an actual distance that was supposed to be. It was thought to be around 24, 25, 26. It may change based off where you're actually running the race. Now, it's 26 miles and 385 yards, or 42.195 kilometers. And that's been set since the early 1900s. But in the late 1980s, that wasn't set yet, not even at the original Olympics. And the marathon is actually based off an ancient run done by Philoctetes in the Greek mythology from Marathon to Athens to send a message about the Battle of Marathon, which is roughly about 24 miles apart. And that's where we get the distance that we start with today. The Boston Athletic Association, or better known as the BAA, wanted to put together a marathon like they did in the Olympics. And so they looked for various locations, and they settled on the Irving Oval in Boston to the Metcalf Mill in Ashland, which was roughly 24.5 miles. And back then, athletic clubs were all over the country. It was similar to YMCAs or gyms you would have today, but they were all local, and every gym kind of sponsored their athletes in different competitions. And some would put on athletic competitions like the Boston Athletic Association did for the marathon. So it was just a very different time in culture of how these things got started. And so everyone in the Boston Athletic Association was a sports enthusiast or an entrepreneur or a politician, somebody that wanted to put on events and wanted to be a part of the community. And the BAA actually put in their constitution that they encouraged all manly sports to promote physical culture. Yes, they said manly, which will actually come into play as women were not able to participate in the Boston Marathon until the 1970s. But the Boston Athletic Association was a gym. They had facilities. They had a gymnasium, a bowling alley, a billiards hall, a Turkish bath, tennis courts, shooting ranges, a country club. And they had daily activities such as boxing, fencing, water polo, running, track and field events. And their first competition, the track and field competition, which they eventually transformed later into their Boston Marathon, where John J. McDermott actually won the first marathon, where he was part of the Knickerbockers Athletic Club of New York. And he had actually participated in another marathon held in New York a few months prior. And he was one of only 15 of runners in that first Boston Marathon, and 6 of them were all from New York. And he said that he lost 10 pounds over the course of the race. And he didn't take the lead for the race until 8 miles into the competition when he was going downhill at the Newton Lower Falls. But that's where he started to increase his lead. Despite running into a funeral procession and 2 stalled cars, he was able to maintain his lead and finish 2 hours, 55 minutes and 10 seconds, 3 minutes and 40 seconds faster than sprinter Lewis, who won the Olympic marathon a few months earlier. And at this time, it was a world record for a marathon. After the marathon, he had bloody and blistered feet. His skin was starting to peel off, and he said this would be probably his last long race. Although he returned the next year to defend his title, but he only finished 4th in the second Boston Marathon. And the Boston Marathon would go on to become a staple in Boston and worldwide. And it's held every day on Patriots' Day unless that falls on a Sunday. And they even ran during each World War and during the Great Depression. And it's the oldest annual marathon ran to this day. In 1924, they added length to the marathon, making it the official miles that we know today. Now, it hasn't been all fun and games with the marathon. In 1905, James Edward Brooks actually passed away of pneumonia running the marathon. And in 1996, a 61-year-old Swedish man named Humphrey Sasage died of a heart attack attempting his 100th marathon. In 2002, Cynthia the Crow passed away of hypothermia at the age of 28. But the worst of all was back in 2013 when terrorists attacked spectators, wounding over 260 spectators and killing 3 of them. One of these 2 men that did this attack was killed, another was taken into custody, and it was one of the saddest moments in sports history. But the Boston Marathon continues to go to this day, representing those that have been lost and showing the pride of all the patriots to not give up. The only time the Boston Marathon has not been held was in 2020 during the pandemic, but has since resumed, continuing the great tradition to this day. Thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you like this, please hit that share button wherever you're listening. Send it to a friend and say, hey, check this out. Learn more about sports with me, and we can go to the sports trivia night and dominate. If you're into that kind of thing. I don't know. But come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.